Ride manufacturers are constantly pushing the boundary and coming up with weird and wonderful new ride types. And in this video, I'm going to cover a bunch of rides that we do not have in the UK. Now, some of these are fairly new, may not even have the first model anywhere in the world. And then there's some that, well, we just don't have them. RMC. And in this, I'm going to cover which park I think it would be best suited to. Now, I have no knowledge, I have no insider tips, etc. There's a high probability that some of these rides will never come to the UK, and even if they do, they may very well come to a different park. So I would love to hear your comments on all of these ride types, whether you want to see them, and indeed if you agree with the park that I'm going to choose for each of these types of rides. All right, let's get the obvious one out of the way then. So RMC clearly doesn't exist in the UK. Now, I don't know what the reason for this is. Somebody commented on one of my videos saying that the restraint system on RMCs is not compliant with the safety standards in the UK. I don't know if that's true. I would have assumed we had the same or very similar standards to Europe, and there obviously there are RMCs in Europe. So if you know anything about this, please do let me know, but I'm not sure if that is the reason or if it's just parks haven't chosen one yet. Now, there's a couple of different types of RMC. You've got the original kind of conversion where they would take a wooden coaster and make it a hybrid. So a very well-known example is where they took Gwazi and made Iron Gwazi. You've also got the Wild Moose. So this was a concept they announced last year, I believe. I don't think we've seen any yet, although I believe there's probably some in the pipeline. And then there's the single rail, so the Raptor coaster. Be honest with you, all three of those, I would say Blackpool. I don't think it's going to happen, just to be clear, but they have the biggest selection of old Woodies to convert. So on that stance, they're a prime candidate. Some of them are listed though, like Grand National, so I don't know if they could. Plus there's space issues, would they need to put extra footers in? There's a lot of reasons I don't think Blackpool would do it, but I think I would like to see them try and do it on at least one of those wooden coasters. Similarly, many people were disappointed when Blackpool just removed the Wild Mouse in 2017 and didn't tell anybody. So the Wild Moose would kind of bring that back in a new kind of modern fashion. Pretty sure when I checked on Google Maps, the footprint of the Wild Moose wouldn't fit where the old Wild Mouse was, but we'll ignore little details like that. And then a single rail. Again, we don't have one. Quite a few people have thought that might be a candidate to replace the Grand Prix or that area. So yeah, for me, RMC, I don't think it's going to happen, but if it did, I would love it to be Blackpool. Now the next one is a water coaster. Now these are typically made by Mack Rides, there are some Intamin, and then there's a few by other manufacturers. Again, we don't have this over here. Some notable examples, you've got Journey to Atlantis over in SeaWorld, and then De Vliegen de Hollander in Efteling, which I didn't get on because it was closed for maintenance. But if you're not familiar with it, the concept is it's kind of a hybrid coaster water ride. So there's elements of it where it is a traditional coaster going around the track, and then at some point it will go into the water and then, you know, traverse this route as a boat, basically. I think for me, the park I would put this one in is Towers. And the reason I'd put it in Towers is because they are lacking water rides big time. Yes, you've got the rapids. You could argue boat ride in the dungeons, although at the time of recording, this is the last day of the dungeons. So will that boat ride still exist in whatever they're theming it to for Scarefest? Who knows? But they don't really have a great selection of water rides. A lot of people miss the log flume, etc. So for me, I would like to see this in Towers. Now, I'm not entirely sure where I'd put it in Towers. I think Dark Forest is an area that to me is just kind of forgotten about. Rita, it's a great launch and then it's boring after that. So like maybe that area, put a water coaster in there. Who knows? Now one that we haven't yet seen anywhere, although we know where the first one is going, is the S&S Axis coaster. Now this has been kind of floating around for a few years now. They've had a prototype out in their kind of offices, but they've had a prototype that you select people could get on. There's various YouTubers, you'll see them on their channels where they've had a go on this prototype and they've all said it is fantastic. We know the first one is going to Saudi Arabia. It'll be called Transformers. It'll be an indoor version of the ride, which looks like a fairly tame version of it. Now again, this could just be typically when you get these new rides, they don't quite know how far they can push it. And you see that when we'll get on to the extreme spinning coasters later. You know, the second one was better than the first one, etc. So although this first one that we're getting in Saudi is like an indoor, probably family orientated coaster, I think it has the potential to be a really good thrill coaster, and for that reason, personally, I would put this one in Thorpe Park. If you're enjoying this video, please do give it a like and consider subscribing. I've set a ridiculous goal of trying to get to 10,000 subs by next year, and I have made great progress, but I need your help. So yeah, please do click that button. I'd also love to hear your thoughts on all of these coasters and the parks that I'm predicting the parks that I'm talking about putting them in. Do you agree? Do you think there's other parks that would be better suited? Or do you just think these rides should not come to the UK at all? Now the next one's quite interesting because this one I think could potentially turn a park around. So that is the Tilt Coaster. Now there's a few of these over in China. They're building one in America right now. But they are such a visual spectacle. Like, you've probably seen it, right? Basically, the train goes along this track, the train stops on the track then tilts through 90 degrees, locks into place, and then the train continues. Now, for the general public, they'd be like looking at this going, oh my God, look at that thing. There's no way I'm going on that. That looks insane. Like it would sell itself. It would get the hype up. It would be, have you seen that coaster at such and such? We need to go and try it, etc., etc. Now, as enthusiasts, we know there's like 6 million safety systems on there. I've seen it behind the scenes with Vekoma? I think it's Vekoma, where they were basically saying, you know, there's literally hundreds, if not thousands, of permutations of weight distribution they have to test. Like, these things are safe, but they just look like they're not safe, and I think that is what sells it. It looks like that is ridiculous, it's scary, it's dangerous. Should you try it? For that reason, again, I'm going to go to Blackpool because they need something to get them back on that stage. If you've seen my other videos, it's a park I care about, it's a park I visited as a kid. It's a park that I don't think is doing particularly well right now, and judging by the comments I'm getting on the videos, most people agree that something needs to change. They do have a lot of potential with whatever this new attraction is. Now, I'm not saying they're going to get a tilt coaster, they probably won't, but something like that would sell itself, and I think it would draw crowds back to that park. So I would love to see a tilt coaster in Blackpool. So I was fortunate enough at the start of the year, when I was over in America, I went to SeaWorld in Orlando, and they have the Pipeline coaster. Now this is B&M's attempt at a standing coaster. If any of you have been on traditional standing coasters, like Shockwave, they were horrific. They were not comfortable, they were contraptions that just, like, standing coasters just seemed like a bad idea. However, having got on this one, this B&M modern concept, night and day. Absolutely fantastic coaster. Definitely one of my highlights of that trip. The airtime you get on that, it's just so comfortable. Like, you're just all over the shop. There's a POV on the channel, and if you watch it, you'll hear me giggling like a schoolgirl. So I definitely enjoyed that one. One thing that I'm not sure about though, the throughput seemed to be pretty poor. Like them getting people into restraints. It didn't seem complicated to get in. It's really easy, you just get in, click it down, job done. But they seem to take a long time, and I don't know if that's a design flaw or an operational issue at that park. I would be a little bit concerned about that. However, in terms of parks, personally, I'd love to see this one go in Towers. I think it's a great family coaster. I think it would just be fantastic. Again, I'm not sure exactly where in the park I would put it, but yeah, if you've been on this coaster, you know what I mean. This thing is amazing, and if you've not, try and get out there. A 4D coaster, that is not the newest concept, but again, one that we still do not have here in the UK. The basic premise is, I mean, visually it's not massively dissimilar to something like Swarm or Mandrill Mayhem in that it's a wing style coaster. The difference being that the seats rotate through a full kind of revolution. Because of that, and the fact that this can be a really extreme coaster, there's two versions of this, right? You get the kind of like flat versions that are just like doing a track from top to bottom, and then you get something like X2, which is just insane. It's a proper coaster that has these spinning seats. I think something like that is very thrilling, very extreme, and therefore for that reason obviously would fit perfectly in Thorpe Park. Now, flying coasters, they get a bit of a bad rep. Now, if you look at something like the Zamperla Volare or Hero in Flamingoland, you can see why. That thing is a bloody torture chamber, it is uncomfortable, it's horrific, it shouldn't still be manufactured, but it is. And then you look at the B&M version with something like Galactica. Obviously Galactica was the prototype, it was the first version. I've been on Manta in SeaWorld, way more extreme, like I almost grayed out on that thing, it was mental. Again, what I said earlier, each new model of that coaster, they push it a little bit further. So obviously Galactica was the first, it was quite tame by comparison. The biggest problem though with the flying coaster concept typically is the load position. So, you know, you've been on Galactica no doubt, and you know, you get in and then it loads you up and then you're just sitting there. And that's fine whilst you're going down the ride, but then you get to the brakes and you sit there for a minute or two waiting on them to dispatch the train in front. And it's not comfortable. However, Vekoma solved this problem with Fly out in Phantasialand, which is spectacular. That coaster is phenomenal, it's visually amazing. You get airtime on a flying coaster. How is that even possible? But the main thing is that load and unload position. You load sitting. Well, I mean, you do on Galactica as well, but like it goes along, so the track's behind you. How do I try and show this? You go along and then at some point the track changes and you just twist and you're in that kind of position for flying. Now, I've heard some people say they don't like the leg restraints, they feel that you're putting too much pressure on your shins. I didn't feel that when I went on it. I think it's a massive improvement on the other flying coasters, and I would love to see that now. For that very reason, and because Galactica is showing its age, it looks run down, it's kind of fallen apart, I'd love to see them rip the Galactica out and put the new flying coaster in its place. Again, probably not going to happen, but that is what I would do if I was bringing one of these to the UK. The last type that I'm going to discuss in this video is the Mack Extreme Spinning Coaster. Now, there's obviously one at Silver Dollar City, and then the most notable one, of course, is Ride to Happiness in Plopsaland. Now, I've been on Ride to Happiness. It is bonkers, absolutely mental launch coaster, free spinning coaster. Like, I rode it 4 or 5 times, every time completely unique. That original kind of roll when you come out the station, crazy. The launches are mental. It's fully free spinning, so it's never going to be the same ride. But the thing that makes it is the audio. Like, they've done such a fantastic job. It is just a beautiful coaster. And for many people, it's their top coaster in the world, which I don't think it is for me. It's certainly up there. I would love to see that replace Spinball Whizzer at Towers. Now, it's not going to happen for various reasons. First of all, I believe Towers have recently spent a chunk of change on a new control system for Spinball, so they're not going to get rid of that anytime soon. Its location is quite close to CBeebies, which is like putting a thrill coaster next to a kids area is probably a bad idea, and I'm not sure there's enough space where Spinball is. However, this is what Spinball could have and should have been, so I would love to see that at Towers. There you go, that's a selection of 5 or 6 different ride types that we do not have here in the UK, some of which we may never have in the UK, who knows. But I would love to hear what you think in terms of these rides, any other rides that I've not put on this list that you think we need over here. Yeah, let me know down below. I have been Chris, you've been watching Coaster Dad, and I shall see you in the next one. Adios.